This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agun Erev Shabbos Rabbi, as we prepare for Parshas Toldos, Habaleinu L'Toiva. Yep. So, welcome everyone. I want to welcome all the Torah Anytime viewers, everyone listening on J-Root Radio, and the big Talmidei Chachamim here in the Koilel Mitzuyanim in Kew Garden Hills, New York. Okay, so let me share with you the following idea that is connected to the parasha. You know, on the words Vayigdalu Hana'arim, Rashi points out that until they were of age, nobody paid attention to recognize their inherent natures. But then when they became 13 years old, so Rashi says this one separated to the Beis HaMedrash, and the other one separated to the house of Avodah Zarah. But Rashi uses a lashon of when they each became 13 years old, and in fact this comes from the Medrash. The Medrash says this is until they became Bar Mitzvah. But once they became Bar Mitzvah, the Medrash says Yaakov Avinu made the bracha Baruch Shepetrani, and each one went on to their desired path in life. So, yeah, right. So now we're going to discuss, since the Makar of Bar Mitzvah comes from this week's Parsha, we're going to speak about some of the Kabbalistic elements of Bar Mitzvah. On Wednesday we spoke about what the Makar is, that a child becomes Bar Mitzvah at 13. We spoke about whether you have to wait 24 hours miyom liyom. So today we're going to speak about a very interesting transformation that occurs to a young man at 13 years old, and something that we all need to be aware of, because this is something that occurs throughout our lifetime. What do we call a Bar Mitzvah boy? What is the traditional classic expression that we use to refer to a Bar Mitzvah boy? We call him a Bar Mitzvah Bachar. What in the world does that mean? A Bar Mitzvah Bachar? A Bar Mitzvah chosen? I mean, if anything, we should say a Bar Mitzvah Boichar. He has free choice now. Until now, he was under the control of the Yetzer Hara. He did not have a Yetzer Tov. We'll see about that. But now he could choose. Now his life is in front of him. But why do we call him Bar Mitzvah Bachur? Who chose him? He should be called Bar Mitzvah Boichar. So famously, Chassam Sofer writes in Parshas Mishpatim, and actually this is the drasha that he gave at his son's Bar Mitzvah, the Ksav Sofer. Wednesday we learned what the Chassam Sofer said at Reb Shimon Sofer's Bar Mitzvah. Now we're going to learn what the Chassam Sofer said at the Ksav Sofer's Bar Mitzvah. V'amarti, says the Chassam Sofer, az Nikra Bachor, v'hayaroy l'kroisai boicher, kimin az boicher b'toiv u'moyes bara. From now on, the child chooses good and despises evil. Kedachsiv b'pasuk in Yeshaya. Ach kari loy bachor. Why? Ki hakadosh baruch hu boicher ba'amo Yisrael. God chooses the Jewish people bi'ahava. The gematria of ahava is 13. Ha-boicher bi'amo Yisrael. When does God choose Klal Yisrael? Bi'ahava, at age 13. So we call him Bachor because now that's when God chooses him. Until now, God did not choose him. Until now, he was not eligible for Ha-boicher bi'amo Yisrael bi'ahava. He wasn't ahava yet. Now that he's ahava, now he's 13, God chooses him, and therefore he's called Bachor, the chosen one. So the question is, what happens at age 13 that now God chooses him, and until now, he does not choose them? So you can say, oh, this is good stuff, I could say it, and my son's Bar Mitzvah, grandson's Bar Mitzvah, cousin's Bar Mitzvah, nephew's Bar Mitzvah. Good. Okay, so just remember where you heard it, okay?
I'm taking notes.
Good. Mr. Heimowitz is taking notes, okay, but we're not going to say it on air, because if they hear that you're taking notes, they're going to know where you got it, so we'll keep it doing. The question is, where did it happen? What happens at age 13? What happens at age 13? The pasuk says in Tehillim like this: Asapra el chayk. I speak regarding the law. Hashem amar Eli. God said to me, Biniata, you are my son. Ani hayom yilaticha. Today I gave birth to you. David HaMelech is saying, he's recording a conversation he had with God. That God told him, you're my son. Today I gave birth to you. Interesting thing, that there was a day in David's life that Hashem said, David, was master? What's going on? David said, Baruch Hashem. And Rabbi said, by the way, I just want you to know, Biniata, you're my son. Today I gave birth to you. So what's that referring to? What day was that? Says the Zohar HaKadosh, Parshas Mishpatim, Kadmata David l'tleis arshnin. When David reached 13, v'zacha b'ahu yoyma de'al arbeisar, and he was zoicha on that day to enter the 14th year. Kedain ksiv, about that time it says, Hashem amar elai, God said to me, V'niyata, you are my son, ani hayom yiladticha. Amazingly, on David's Bar Mitzvah day, he had a special guest. Who was the guest? The Rebbeinu Shalom. And what did the Rebbeinu Shalom tell him? He didn't give him a card. He told him personally, V'niyata, ani hayom yiladticha. Why? My timer. Before Bar Mitzvah, he was not the son of Hashem. And the supreme Neshama did not dwell on him. He was still in the years of Arla, like the years of Arla are off limits. So David was still in the years of Arla. Again, because of this, Ani hayom yiladticha. Hayom vada yiladticha. Today I gave birth to you. Ani v'loy sitra achra. Until now, you had a neshama maybe from the dark side. Now you have a neshama from the right place. Kama dehava adashta. Ani b'chodai. Var esrin shnin. And what happens at 20? Maksiv b'shloimai ki ben hayisi la'avi mamish vadai. So what the Zohar seems to be saying is that before 13, a person does not have a neshama ilah. But on the Bar Mitzvah day, Hashem gives a person the neshama ilah, and not from the sitra achra, which implies that until 13, maybe the neshama comes from a different place. And we'll have to maybe have a different shiur. Well, how many different places can the neshama come from? But these are just the simple words of the Zohar Kadosh, that the neshama comes at age 13. So one second, Rabbi, are you telling me that when a Jew is born, he doesn't have a neshama? I never heard that. I didn't know that. Pal, there are a lot of things you don't know. Okay? So, when a person is born, a Jew is born, they do not have a neshama. So, when do they get the neshama? According to this Zohar, at age 13. But we're going to have to explain this further. The Arizal writes in the Eitz Chaim from Chaim Vital, he writes explicitly, Shenishmas ha'adam eina nechneses bai Ad Yud Gimel Shanim. The neshama of a person does not enter until the 13th year. Says Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Or HaChaim HaKadosh, in his 20th interpretation on the first pasuk in Bereshis, he says, V'ha'aretz hoisa soyu v'avoyu v'choshech al pnei sohim v'rachalikim v'rachafes al pnei amoyim. That refers to the darkness of the first 13 years of life. V'yoymer Elokim yihi'ar. God sends help against the darkness. When? That's when the child reaches 14 years old. It is revealed from his holy abode. Ruach Elokin Kadishin, a spirit of the holy God. Neshama Kadosha Tahira, the holy Neshama. Let's explain that further. The Holy Neshama? Which part of the Holy Neshama? So, the Arizal on the Shar HaGalgulim says that really the truth is, throughout life, the Neshama is changing, is transforming. It does not remain stagnant. Different things are added to it. So now we're going to get the history of your soul. You never knew. You could be 10 years old, 20, 50, 190. Good to know. What am I? What happens to me? Says Arizal, when a person's born, his nefesh enters. And if his actions are good, then he gets the full ruach when he's 13. Sha'az nikra ish gamar. The neshama will be complete at age 20, like the Zohar says in Parshas Mishpatim. But by the way, if you don't fix your ruach, meaning if you don't get the ruach at Bar Mitzvah, then the neshama is not going to come at 20. Basically, you could go your whole life and never have a neshama. Saying this Jew doesn't have a neshama. Yeah, he doesn't have a neshama. He never got it. V'chein im lo tikin as a nefesh legamri ein by rak nefesh bovad. This guy, he's a behema. He only has a nefesh. So that's a frightening thing, but we don't shy away from the truth over here. So this is what the Arizal says. In the ideal person, nefesh when you're born, ruach at 13, neshama at 20. But again, you could have people who are delayed. I mean, you see people, you get people who are in the 5th grade and they're really in 8th grade. So it's the same thing with the neshama. You could have Jews who are, they're being left back, they're behind, they're delayed. Okay.
If they don't get it at 13, right?
When do you get it?
Can they get it if they...
Yeah, you could get it.
For example.
You could get it. You could get it later. And we're going to talk about some of the minhagim. We know there's a minhag that the Bar Mitzvah boy darshans at the Bar Mitzvah. Should you do it? Should you not do it? We're going to learn a very interesting phenomenon that transpires during the drasha when the boy says it at his Bar Mitzvah. Look in. Now this is the Sefer Seder Hayom. Now who wrote the Seder Hayom? Seder Hayom was written by Rav Moshe ben Macher. Rav Moshe ben Macher is one of the Gurei HaArizal, one of the students of the Arizal. He wrote a very important tefillah that every single Jew says every single morning. You know what he wrote? Moideh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechazarta bi nishmasi b'chemla kama Rabba munasacha. Not b'chemla Rabba. If you say b'chemla Rabba, you don't know what you're talking about. It's b'chemla kama Rabba munasacha.
Until your Bar Mitzvah, right?
No, one second. So the question is, so you're telling me it's not found in the Gemara, Moideh? Yes, I'm telling you. It's not found anywhere until the students of the Arizal. Rav Moshe ben Macher. Moshe ben Macher. So he wrote something called Seder Hayom. In the Seder Hayom, he wrote a parish on Tefillah, and he also maps out for us the scheduling of the soul's arrival. Okay, so he says like this: Amru Chachmei Emes. The Mekubalim say, "Ki nefesh bala adam b'yom shezacha lehimal b'sar lasai." The nefesh comes when a person is zaycha to circumcise the flesh of his arla. Uv'shem Yisrael yichuneh. V'acher shemagia liyud gimel shana v'yom echad. When you get to 13, zaycha l'ruach, which is the Yetzer Tov, she'amarnu. Now, v'im hayosh nefesh gam kim mikoich ha'toiva. If the nefesh that he got when he was born is from a good place, then it becomes the resting place for the ruach. One without the other cannot be. The two together are good. It's not called possessing the Yetzer Tov b'shleimos. Shehi betela b'miyat lagabe Yetzer hara hashoyel olam mibeten imay me'esh sheyatzel aver ha'olam. Nevertheless, it's not called the Yetzer Tov fully, because it's still batal b'miyah to the Yetzer hara who's been ruling over you since you were born. By the way, the malach that comes, listen carefully, the malach that comes and makes you forget the Torah, there's no malach that comes and makes you forget the Torah. Who's the malach who taught you the Torah b'mei imai? That's the Yetzer Tov. He leaves as soon as you're born. When does the Yetzer hara come? When you're born. La Pesach Atas Roivetz. Oh, the Yetzer hara comes, you forget all your learning. There's no special malach. It's the Yetzer hara. And then the Yetzer Tov leaves. And at 13, the Yetzer Tov comes back. When you have a Yetzer hara, you forgot everything you saw and everything you knew. But, now that you have a nefesh and a ruach, now this little kid has a fighting shot. Before Bar Mitzvah, he's lost. He's not going to overcome the Yetzer hara. The Yetzer hara has him in his grips. The moment that he has a Yetzer Tov, so now he has a nefesh and a ruach versus Yetzer hara, now we're talking. If you're going to fight a heavyweight and you're going to be, a featherweight, there's no shot. But if you could get two featherweights, one in one corner, one in the other, then you could do something. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know any. I don't know if they're true. Yeah. Look, sometimes it comes early. I guess, it's not set in stone. Now he says like this. V'mlayasa bar oinshim hu v'lachein oinshin oisim yud gimel shana v'mala. Why does a person become a bar oinshim at 13 years old? Because now he's accountable. Until then, what do you want from the poor kid? The Yetzer Hara has him in his grips. But now that you have a nefesh and a ruach, now you have a shot. But 20 years old, now you're going to be punished, not only lamata, you'll be punished lamal. In other words, the more components of the soul you have, the more culpable, the more liable, the more responsible you are for your maisim. So until now, this all sounds very Kabbalistic, and it does not seem to have any practical nafkaminas, but it does. I'll tell you practical nafkamina. So here's a shaila. So you go into a restaurant, and you say to the guy, hey pal, I want a bagel and cream cheese. So this guy, who comes from South America, who, I don't know, maybe he's Mexican, he's a nice gentleman, he's a tzelem elikim. One thing is, I guarantee you he did not wash Nego Vaser in the morning. But here's the problem. The problem is that before you wash Nego Vaser, you can't touch food. If you touch food, there's a question about whether you could eat it or not. So how can you have this Mexican guy touch your bagel? So I don't know, probably you don't ask the guy, do me a favor, do you mind washing Nego Vaser? Say Moida Ani and say Reishis Chachma. And maybe. So why? Why? What? No Tumah by Goyim. Why not? Yeah, Goyim are Tamei Meis. Yeah. So why is there no Tumah here? Because the Pshat over here says a Shulchan Aruch Harav, is that where does the Tumah during the night come from? Tumah is always when there's a vacuum. So when the Neshama goes up, there's a vacuum of Kedusha, the Tumah comes. But Goyim don't have a Neshama. So if Goyim don't have a Neshama, they don't have Tumah in the night, and therefore, the halacha is that if the guy handles your food, it is not a problem. Well, what about a little kid?
What about the city has a health code? Can you rely upon that the guy washed his hands before he started to prepare food?
Ask the people in the food industry how reliable that is. But Marv Rabbi, now the shaila is, what about if a child touches the food before he washes Nego Vaser? According to what we're saying, that somebody doesn't have a neshama until they're 13 years old. So that means no neshama left, so they don't have tumah during the night. So it's not a problem if they touch food. So until what age are we mekel? So we would say, according to the Shiur so far, we could be mekel until 13 years old. Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav in Archayin Siman Dalet Siv Katan Beis, Umitam Zeh, 5th line, Nohagu lahakol b'negias haktanim. We're mekel when children who are katanim shaloi higiu lechinuch, they haven't reached the age of chinuch. Lefisha Gemar ve'ikar knisas nefesh hakadusha adam hu b'yigam mashana v'yamechad. The main neshama does not come in. Primary neshama doesn't come till 13. Lazach v'yibez in the keva, because then they're chayiv in mitzvahs minat Torah and they become bnei unchim. But that's the ikar. But it starts earlier. When does it start? It starts the age of chinuch. Meaning, it's not that one day this kid was a nefesh, and then poof, the moment he wraps on the tefillin, bam, there's like a new soul that enters his body immediately. No, it's a gradual process. When does it begin? 6 or 7 years old. So from 6 and 7, we're machmir, because they have some degree of ruach. But before 6, if a kid touches food, you can be mekel. Utchilas knisas nefesh zu hakadusha hu bechinach l'Torah l'mitzvahs shechivu chacham l'chanech. Now, the truth is, even from the time of Milah, they still have something. They still have a nefesh, and therefore, it is considered a holy practice to wash children's, even little children, from the time they're very young, to wash their hands for Nego Vaser, especially from when they start touching food. But again, this concept that the neshama doesn't come till Bar Mitzvah has halachic ramifications as well. Comes the Mishnah Psachim, or L'Arba Asar, the night of the 14th, Boid Kines HaChametz, we check for Chametz L'Or HaNer, by the light of the candle. Or L'Arba Asar, Boid Kines HaChametz L'Or HaNer. Says the Arizal that this Mishnah could be read al pi Kabbalah as follows. Look at number 10. V'yigdulu hana'arim. And this week's passage says the kids grew up. Ki achar shenigdulu nasu shnayim. After they grew up, they became 2. Ki aratu lo hoya lechad. Esav is a Yetzer Hara. Ish sadeh. Oyev oilam hazeh. Sadeh is oilam hazeh. And Yaakov is in Ishtam. Yoshev oiholim. Oisik b'Torah. Vayazed Yaakov nazed. What is vayazed? A lashon of mezed. Intention. Thinking. He's thinking. Machshavos. He's thinking. Shechoshev la'olam. Heich yaved el elkav. How could he serve God? Nazed is a lashon of machshava. Asher zadu aleim. He's thinking, how could he get oilam haba? And in the meantime, what's the Yetzer Hara doing? The Yetzer Hara is becoming subdued. Kivan sharaya ha'adam chayzer ach oilam haba. But once the Yetzer Hara sees that a person is coming and thinking about how he's going to get oilam haba, v'zeh shekasav ayave Esav is the Yetzer Hara from the Sadeh, the Tanuge oilam hazeh, and he's oyef. The Yetzer Hara is sick and tired from the Yetzer Tov. And Esav, the Yetzer Hara, says to Yaakov, the Yetzer Tov, haliteni na. Kikama yamim shesagavta oisi. Enough already. Vayomer Yaakov, michra chayim es b'chayras chali. Because on the first day that the Yetzer Tov enters a person's body, 13 years and a day, then he rules on that day, michra chayim, and the Yetzer Hara is nichna. Because the first day of the 14th year, the first day of the 14th year, is when the Yetzer Tov enters in the Zchus of the Torah, which is called Ar, Hanikra Ar, the Torah Ar, and the Zchus of the Mitzvahs, which is called Ner. So Ar Liyadalad, the first day of the 14th year, through the Torah and the mitzvahs that he did. Through the schus of this, that's how we search for the Yetzer Hara and we push him away. This is the famous remez of the Arizal. Arli Yadaled. Look at the Torah Zari. Arizal. This is the famous remez. Arli Yadaled. The first day of the 14th year, we start to attack and fight the Yetzer Hara La'ar Haner. I'm going to tell you an amazing remez. Yeah.
The word Yosef.
Yeah.
You take the first and the third letter.
Yeah.
You get 13. Take the second and the fourth, you get 14. That's a difference.
Okay.
Neshama not having Neshama.
No.
Yeah, Vav.
Zayin.
Vav and Zayin.
Oh, Vav and Zayin.
13, and Yud and Dalet is 14 by Yosef.
Why would you take the first and the third? That's a different question. Okay, Rabbi say it says in Mishlei. Ner Hashem, the candle of God. Nishmas Adam is the soul of man. What is man's candle? What is the candle? The neshama. Chayfes kol chadrei baten. So there's a sefer Shefa Tal. In the Shefa Tal, he explains the pasuk Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, that this pasuk alludes to the three components of the soul. Ner stands for nefesh, ruach, and Nishmas Adam. Ner is nefesh, ruach, neshama. All three. And by the way, the Tikkunei Zohar says, Ner is nafsha v'rucha. The nefesh is the wick, the ruach is the oil, and the neshama is the fire. So Ner, we see from here, is a Rashi Tevos for nefesh and ruach. The nefesh is a psila, and the ruach is the zayas. So says Pinchas Friedman in the Sefer on Bar Mitzvah called B'ni Ata, Ar La'arba Asar, on the day of the Bar Mitzvah, when the person enters the 14th year, Bait Gines HaChametz, he checks for Chametz with what? La'ar Haner, with the Ner. What's the Ner? The Nefesh and the Ruach that the kid just got. Now the kid just got his Ruach, so Bait Gines HaChametz La'ar Haner. So the truth then is, when the Zohar says you get the Neshama, it's not exactly the Neshama. Which part of the Neshama? Which part of the Neshama do you get on the day of the Bar Mitzvah? The Ruach. The Nefesh you get when you're born, the Ruach you get at Bar Mitzvah, and the full Neshama you get at 20. Therefore explains, Mavur Mizan number 14. Shabiyoyma Bar Mitzvah, Nechnesas by Haruach, Benoisaf ala Nefesh, which came when you were born, and then when you're 20, you get the Neshama. Therefore, when the Zohar says you get the Neshama Ilah, the Kavanah is for the Ruach. Marv Rabbi say, who understood Bar Mitzvah more than anybody else? Probably Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, right? I mean, he's telling us all these secrets. So what kind of bar mitzvah did Rav Shimon Bar Yochai make? What did he have at his bar mitzvah? Who was the caterer? What did he serve? What kind of stations were there? What was going on at the bar mitzvah that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai made for Rabbi Lazar? So the Zohar says in Parshas Bereshis, in Medrash Hanelam, he says, Amar Rab Chia, Im kein ein lohem neshama l'goyim, ela oisa hanefesh hachaya. Amar Rabbi Yochanan kein hu. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Uli Yisrael man Yahava, who gives the soul to the Jews? Tava Rab Chia, Amar Rabbi Lazar tachazi, T'tznan ba l'tayar Messiah Nosai. One who comes to purify himself, we help him. Mai siyu ayavin onlei. Ela hahu. What help do we give someone who comes to purify? You know what the help is? Nishmasa kadisha. The neshama gives him smach. The neshama helps him in this world and the next world. Until 13, all you have is a nefesh. From 13 on, if you want to be righteous, if you want to be pure, then we give you a neshama kadishi law. Where does it come from? This gazaras mikursi yikar demalka comes from the kisei hakavod. Amar Yehuda, I know time in the taninon. Betlas eser mechilin derachame b'masnis de Rabbi Lazar. This is the meaning of the 13 paths of Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim. Meaning, basically, in the first 13 years, you need a lot of help. That's where the Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim come in. Before you have a neshama, you're reliant on the Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim. Listen to this. Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Who did Reb Shimon invite to his kids' bar mitzvah? Now we're about to get the invitation list of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Who did he invite? Some people, how do you decide who you invite? Some people say, let's see who's going to give good presents, Who could... Says Reb Shimon bar Yochai, Zimin lamari masnisa lamecha b'sudasa rabba. He invited the masters of the Mishnah. Davilahu. V'chafa kol beisa v'mani dikar. He covered his whole house with expensive items. He put the rabbis on this side, he was on the other side, and he was very happy. Amrulei mai b'dichusa. What are you so happy about, Reb Shimon? What's going on with you today? What's up with you? Why are you so happy? This is the day that the Holy Neshama was given. Tehul Rabbi Lazar Bri. And that's why I'm so happy. Comes the Kaf HaChaim, Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer, and he says a wondrous thing. He says, we learned on Wednesday from the Yam Shel Shlomo is a Bar Mitzvah, Sudas Mitzvah. He says it's a Sudas Mitzvah by B'yayim. If it's on that day that he became a Bar Mitzvah, it's a Sudas Mitzvah. And if it's not by B'yayim, and then it's only Sudas Mitzvah if the kid speaks. What if it's not by B'yayim and the kid doesn't speak? So stam, it won't be the only time you're mavata from Torah in your life and you wasted your time and money. So chalk this one up as another. In other words, only a Sudas Mitzvah, either on that day or if the kid speaks. Says the Kaf HaChaim, another inyan of why do we mutcha the kid? Here you have this little kid. The kid could barely get his head over the stender, and you're teaching him Shagas Aryes and Reb Chaim Briskers and Papulim and Chakiras. The kid doesn't even know what he's talking about. Certainly nobody else knows what he's talking about. The answer is, says the Kaf HaChaim, you know why we have the kid speak? A different reason. Because this is the day he gets his soul. Through learning Torah, that the kid teaches. And the Sudas Mitzvah, for his honor, he's zoicha to a higher soul. Meaning not everyone gets the same level soul. It depends on the sanctity of the kid, and it depends on the kid's drasha. The inyan of the kid's drasha is, it instills in him a holier soul. This way the kid... Because they're afraid, in Shiur the next day, this kid's going to get, he's going to be the best guy in the Shiur. They want to keep their stand. But I don't know. Anyway, and if you... Oh, wow. What does? Yeah. Look, if a person didn't give his kid to speak, so tell him to say Dvar Torah tonight. It's never too late. And then the kid will get but the inyan of tying the Bar Mitzvah to a drasha, to siyum, and so on and so forth, and to a Sudas Mitzvah, is this enables the child to get a higher level ruach. And he says, if the kid doesn't have a darshan, the rabbi's darshan, the father darshans, fine. And let's just conclude. I just want to say for halachos v'alichos bar mitzvah that it's good for the kid to learn mishnayos on that day, because again, the same way we learn mishnayos for a nifter, that because Mishnah is oisios neshama, so too we want the kid to be zaycha to a higher level neshama, and therefore it is an inyan learning Mishnah. But the point being is, I think, obviously everybody's familiar, when the kid becomes 13, he's maturing, and now he's chayiv in mitzvahs. But I don't think it's really understood that, no, the kid he's becoming Jewish today. In other words, he's becoming a yid today. And maybe we could add as follows. Some Sofer says that why is he called a bachar habar mitzvah? Because God says, I choose you today. Why is God choosing a kid at 13 years old? I think the reason is, what did David HaMelech say that the Rebbeinu Shalom told him at 13? David said that Hashem told him at 13, B'niyata, now you're my son. Why are you only Hashem's son at Bar Mitzvah? The answer is very simple. What makes you the son of Hashem? What makes you the son of Hashem? What makes a father a father? It's because you're made out of the same DNA. So what makes Hashem our father? Because Hashem is Eloka, and we have a neshama, and we're chelek Eloka. We are a piece of the divine. The only reason Hashem's our Av is not because He loves us. Just because you love someone, you don't become their father. You're someone's father if you contributed to their DNA. On what day could we say that we are the son of Hashem? When we get the chelek Eloka mimal. What day do we get that? The Bar Mitzvah. Therefore, David HaMelech says, on my Bar Mitzvah, Hashem said to me, B'niyata. Therefore, Hashem says to every Bar Mitzvah boy, I choose you. When do I choose you? I choose you on the day of your Bar Mitzvah. Haboicher bi'amo Yisrael. When? At age 13, bi'ava, at the age of Ava. So we should taka bizoicha, first of all, to keep our nefesh, to keep our neshama, keep our ruach, to maintain it, to preserve it, to sustain it. And we hope that we make the Bar Mitzvahs in the right way so that our children are elevated to the proper status. Rabbi, have a great Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.